What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to Coming to Resolution. I almost forgot how to do my fucking intro, and I just did it yesterday. If that tells you how my brain's working today. Anyway, so yesterday I was talking about day to day with depression. I kind of wanted to get into like the do's and don'ts dealing with those emotions, because there's a lot of things that you can do to make it worse, and there's a lot of things that I think you can do to maybe not fix the problem, but make it a little bit easier. Um, so we're gonna get into that. I'm gonna start with the don'ts because I have a whole lot of those. There was a time in my life where I experimented, we'll call it, with some substances, and I also drank a lot of alcohol because I didn't want to feel whatever it is I was feeling. I didn't want to deal with any of that. I wanted it to stop, and that was the only thing that I knew would stop it. But every single time I got sober again, I just felt worse, so it was a whole lot of ups and downs during this time, and the ups were not because I was doing okay, it was because I was intoxicated in one way or another. I'll tell you what, it's never a good idea to handle emotions that way, especially with drugs and alcohol. Alcohol specifically is a depressant, meaning that you could be feeling really well and like have some drinks and you should be fine. However, if you decide that you're going to drink every day, let's say you do it for a week, right? You're going to notice, or maybe you won't, but you're going to notice a change in how you're feeling emotionally. And it's not going to be positive. It's never positive with alcohol. Alcohol is good for when you're doing really well, and you're at least dealing with emotions and you're on the way to healing. And then alcohol is okay, but still I wouldn't do too much. Alcohol is not a thing that we should be drinking a lot of because it's a depressant. I can tell you from firsthand experience that whenever I was really depressed, and that's all I had to turn to, I went down a really dark road. I was drinking every night to just go to sleep, and it didn't do me any favors. I slept okay-ish. It didn't honestly help me a whole lot with sleeping, but that was the only way that I knew how I could get to sleep. Because at this point in time, there was a stretch of almost an entire 48 hours where I literally did not sleep and I didn't eat anything either. I couldn't. I tried. I laid in bed I remember I laid in bed at 10 o'clock the first night, and I didn't have my phone out, like it was plugged in on the table next to me, and I was trying to go to sleep. I can't fall asleep. I am struggling to fall asleep, and the next thing I know, it's 1 in the morning, and I have to be up at 5, right? So, um, I tried a whole lot of different ways for me to get to sleep, and it did not work out for me. So I was up all night, and then the next day I couldn't. Whenever I got up to go to work, I couldn't eat anything. I think I lost about 20 pounds in this stretch that I wasn't eating. The second night, we I, I'm laying in bed. It's 10 o'clock again. And I noticed that I am feeling the exact same way that I felt the night before when I couldn't sleep. So I decided to take it upon myself to go and grab my alcohol and drink entirely too much. And I fell asleep. Woke up the next morning and I felt like absolute shit. Obviously, because hangovers are a thing. And Whenever I went into work, my boss asked me, because I guess I just looked like I felt, I guess. He asked me what was going on, and I remember telling him, "Oh, I wasn't able to sleep last night, so I had a lot of Fireball." And he was like, "Okay, are you okay?" I don't know. And I went on with my day. That was my solution to getting to sleep for the following, I don't even know, 2 weeks, and I wasn't doing well at the start of this when I couldn't sleep at all, right? And through that 2 weeks that I'm drinking every night just to fall asleep, I noticed a drastic drop in my mental health, and I noticed how dark my thoughts were and how badly I didn't want to be here anymore, and I didn't know what my way out was, right? I had no fucking idea. But I knew that alcohol would numb it enough for me to at least go to sleep. That was my that was my solution. Then at the end of this stretch, when I decide that I can't do this anymore, right before I hit that moment of I can't do this anymore, I remember I was sitting on the floor of my bedroom, drunk, and I was looking around my room. Mind you, at this point, I was already a felon. I'm looking around my room trying to figure out how I can very quickly um, take myself out. And I thought about it and thought about it, and I uh, experimented with a few things, and I don't know where it even came from, but I had a snap back to reality. I had a moment of clarity where I decided I can't do this anymore. It is going to be me dead in max a month if I keep doing this. Mind you, throughout this entire 2 weeks, I can't hardly eat anything. And I've said before that your gut health and your physical health is directly correlated with your mental health. So, because I'm not eating and the only sort of like exercise I'm getting is at work, um, there's I'm not very healthy at this point. Physically, I'm just not healthy. Every time I tried to eat something, I'd get to a certain point, and it wasn't much. I would get to a certain point, and I would start gagging because I don't know where that came from, but that's what happened, and I couldn't eat anymore. Whenever I made the decision that I wasn't gonna do this anymore, it got really fucking hard to get out of the mindset that I was in. Really hard. The alcohol I had to pour it out. I remember I poured it out. I had half a bottle of, it's not Fireball, but it's very similar. I had a very big bottle that I had already drinking half of, and I poured it all out because I knew that that was only going to make it worse. So I tried to get back into working out the, I think it was the next day that after I decided that I can't do this anymore. I think it was the next day. And I couldn't do anything. Like, I couldn't do a set of 5 push-ups, let alone lift any kind of weights other than when I'm at work. I don't know what happens there, but I couldn't do it. So I knew that if I had kept trying and I kept making sure that I did the physical activity, that eventually my body would want the food, right? So I tried really hard to do that, and it got super hard to get out of the whole cycle that I was in because it felt like I couldn't do anything. And obviously that didn't help me with my mental at first. That was something that I had to deal with separately because there was a lot going on there. And alcohol was just not the way to do it. It led me down a very dark road. Very, very dark road. Um, so I didn't do that anymore. Um, Now drugs, I can also speak on. I did that. I did a lot of those when I was a teenager. I did a lot of those. Um, because again, I didn't want to feel what I was feeling. There's not a lot of people who dealt with the kind of mentality that I was dealing with as a teenager. I was an entirely different person. I was on drugs that nobody should be on, let alone a 15-year-old. So there was a lot where a lot of my teenage years that I don't remember much of because I was fucked up, to put it simply. I did a lot of drugs and I made sure that I could do them as often as I could without killing myself. And I can tell you from that it doesn't lead anywhere good either because the environment alone is dangerous, right? Because you have to hang out with people who aren't good people in order to be doing these kinds of things. And you find yourself in a lot of dangerous situations, or even just potentially dangerous situations, but either way, situations. And I ran into a lot of issues during this time in my life, and I saw a lot of things. Those things I remember. I can't fucking tell you half the time what I learned in school. I can't tell you half the time what I did after school, other than I know that I was going to get fucked up. That's about the extent of what I remember. There's very few there's very few vivid memories from my teenage years. So if you feel like drugs are your only escape from what you're feeling and they're the only thing that can stop whatever it is you're dealing with, it's not. The best case scenario is you're numb and you don't have to deal with the emotions. That's best case scenario. Worst case, you're dead. That's it. You're dead. You're not here anymore. There's no coming back from death. You don't get to get into being a better person. You don't get to learn and grow and improve on things and live the life that you know you want to live. Because nobody wants to be a drug addict. I mean, nobody. Nobody that I've ever met wanted to be a drug addict. Because being a drug addict comes with a lot of fucked up shit. You feel like garbage almost all the time. Your mental's all fucked up. Your perception is all skewed. Because nothing hardly ever makes sense because your brain's not working. So, not, and I'm gonna touch on the environment again. The environment isn't worth it because, again, you have to be around really bad people a lot of the time in order to be doing those things. And surrounding yourself with bad people is only going to make you worse, whether that be personally or it's going to be worse on your mental health. Regardless, it's bad. I can tell you from experience, I know. So, don't use substances, including alcohol, to deal with emotions or to numb yourself from emotions because all that's going to do is it's suppressing emotions at best. And every time you suppress emotions for a long extended period of time, you end up exploding. I'll tell you what, whenever I finally kicked the drugs, I got into another really bad living situation. I'm not going to go into detail as to what that was, but it was a bad living situation. And I didn't know how to deal with it. So I went back to alcohol. I was drinking first thing in the morning. Like there was not a time that maybe you couldn't tell, but there was not a time that I wasn't drunk during this particular time period. And at this point, we hadn't reached the cycle of the 48 hours that I didn't go to sleep, and I don't even know how long of hardly eating anything. This was way before then, but this was one of those times where that's what I felt was my only escape, because I couldn't get my hands on anything else, but I knew I couldn't I couldn't go back to doing the same shit because I knew where that went. And I had already kicked that, and there was a particularly scary situation I ran into whenever I was dealing with drugs. Not because of environment, because I literally thought I was gonna die. Um, so I knew I couldn't do that again. But I knew alcohol wasn't gonna kill me, so I went to that, and same thing. It just led down dark thoughts, and I all you could ever get out of me was anger at that point. There was even one time, this doesn't happen, but there was one particular time I was so angry. I had fucked up my foot, and I was so angry, and I was in so much pain that I started crying in the middle of the school hallway. Like I couldn't keep the tears back. I had to learn then. That was the first time I ever experienced something like that, but I had to learn then that alcohol was not going to help me. Um, there's a few lessons in my life that I've had to learn a couple of times, and that was one of them. It's not worth it. But during this time, was so emotional and so angry that you weren't getting me. You were getting an entirely different person. There was no like happiness coming out of me. If there was a smile on my face, it was a fake one. It was a mask, because I couldn't I couldn't. I just didn't have the ability to feel that kind of happiness, or that's what I felt anyway, because there's a whole lot of factors to that, but that's what happened. That's how I thought I could deal with it, and it didn't work. I was explosive all the time. I was treating people like garbage who had nothing to do with the situation because I felt like shit. That saying that misery loves company, I've been that person, and it's not conducive. It's not beneficial. All it does is hurt you and the people around you. So, those are a couple of don'ts. Drugs and alcohol are a big fucking no's when you're dealing with depression, because all it does is lead you down roads that you don't really want to go down. As badly as you want the pain to stop, and as badly as you feel, those will only make it worse. So there's a couple of don'ts. Something that I have had to learn recently is not to live in my emotion. Meaning I don't let it consume my entire day. I don't let it affect other things around me. Like, let's say I'm just really irritated, or maybe I'm full fucking angry, right? I'm not going to let it affect anybody that it has nothing to do with, because they have nothing to do with the situation, and I'm not here to make people miserable. It's not what I'm here for. So I try to avoid doing that. So whenever I am living in my emotion, it becomes a major problem that affects everything. because I don't know if it's just a me thing, but I feel emotions very intensely, um, very very intensely. Anger or depression, whatever it is, I feel those very very intensely. So I've had to learn not to let those emotions affect anything that I can keep it from affecting. And sometimes that's really difficult to do, but I have to remind myself, like, is it really fucking worth making somebody else miserable because I feel shitty? No. To me, it's not. I don't want people to feel what I feel. When it comes to negative emotions, I don't want that. I don't want anybody to feel what I feel. So I do my best not to let that happen. There have been plenty of times while I'm trying to make this change happen that I've absolutely slipped up on that, and I fucked up a lot of shit. But I try my best. I really try my best. It's difficult to do when you're flooded and emotions are just fucking they're just burning themselves into your brain. It's just really fucking difficult to not let it affect anything. But that's what you have to do. You have to be willing to separate your emotions from your day to day, like your work ethic or your relationships, your friends, anything. Like, if any of those things have nothing to do with what you're feeling, then those things don't need to experience what you're feeling in a negative way. Max, it should be, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, just so you're aware. I'm sorry if I seem a little off today. And leave it the fuck there unless they ask. Because anytime that you are coming across as aggressive or like it's somebody else's fault, that begets a lot of problems. So don't do that. Don't allow yourself to live in your emotions. And while I understand that it's hard not to do whenever you're flooded and everything is overwhelming, it's important. It's really important. You can't allow yourself to let those emotions, no matter how flooded you are, to affect other things, especially in a repeating pattern. When you're in a repeating pattern of allowing your own negativity to affect anything around you, that fucks up a lot of shit. You could lose your job, you could lose your relationship, you could lose friends. And if they're real friends, like, they are real friends, they're not those fair weather, like, hi bye kind of friends, then I view those things as important, and I don't want to lose the people I have, so I don't let that happen. I try my best not to let that happen. A couple of do's, let's say, like, a constructive distraction, right? A constructive distraction could be anything from, let's say you write songs or you paint. You're an artist of some sort. You're a photographer. Anything like that, I think is really important to do whenever you're dealing with the depression. If you have a passion for something that's creative or even just constructive, let's say you like building race cars or you like building furniture, do that. Do that shit. It's not going to solve your problem, but it's going to help you a little bit in the moment because you're giving yourself a task to do. You're doing something that you love doing, and it's going to release a little bit of endorphins and maybe make it not feel so heavy. You know what I mean? And if you can make it not feel so heavy, you're accomplishing a lot just with that, you know? Because I, in my own personal experience, when emotions feel heavy and I'm overwhelmed and I'm fucking flooded, it is really hard to do anything that I want to do creatively. Like this. I consider this a creative outlet. It's something that I'm passionate about doing. If I'm not doing this, I feel like I'm doing something wrong because I'm not doing what I'm passionate for. So even when I'm dealing with the depression or whatever negative emotions, I make myself do this. I just suppress it for a little bit so I can do this and hopefully put something out that's of value and fucking continue on with my day and deal with whatever it is I need to deal with later. I don't consider this to be necessarily constructive or destructive, but video games can be a good distraction if you're a gamer. However, it is very important if you're in a relationship that you don't let it consume all of your time, because that can lead to a lot of problems. So keep that in mind. If you're the gaming type and this is one of your distractions and you're putting all of your time into that, you're not spending any time with your partner, that builds tension without you being there because you're not spending time together. And that can lead to a couple of different issues. But I view that as a good distraction if you're able to moderate how much time you're putting into it, depending on your life situation, I guess. Other constructive distractions can be something like cleaning. A lot of people that I know will put on some music or a podcast that they like and they will clean their whole fucking house. I'm not saying you need to go that hard, but that is a good distraction. It goes back to the clean spaces in that video yesterday. Like you get it done. There's that initial satisfaction of having the task done, and then when you walk back in that room or back in that space, then you feel better looking at it because it is less clutter and it's a little bit of a release from the clutter in your brain. That's how I view a lot of overwhelming emotions. It causes clutter in your brain. Makes it really hard to be able to see things clearly in terms of perspective. You know, that begets a lot of issues. I think anything constructive that you can do as a distraction is a really good way just to take a little bit of a break from those emotions. It is not going to solve your problem. You will not heal from doing this unless you're thinking about how to do that while doing these things. That's not going to happen. You still have to go back to those emotions and face them. You have to deal with whatever it is head on. There was a time in my own life whenever I had to learn this lesson that I wasn't dealing with my emotions. I was suppressing them in whatever fucking way I could and distracting myself with whatever the fuck I could. And even if I wasn't drinking, at this point I had already kicked drugs. But even if I wasn't drinking, I was distracting myself in some way, right? None of it was super helpful because I wasn't doing the healing. I wasn't doing the reflection that it takes in order to figure out why something is bothering me and why I'm feeling a certain way and try to heal that wound. And whenever I was doing this, those emotions, because they were being bottled up and there was just more getting piled in there, I kept exploding in spurts at first. I was just exploding. And then it eventually became the loud, like a soda can exploding. You ever put one of those in the freezer for too long? That was me at this point. I just kept exploding. And because I was exploding and not dealing with my emotions, and I hadn't learned that I don't need to be shitty to people because I'm feeling shitty, I was being shitty to almost everybody. And that's not fair. That's not fair behavior. That's not fair of anybody to do. So I decided that I was just gonna go through each individual thought, right? Each individual feeling that I could pinpoint in that moment. I wrote them down. I wrote everything down at once. And I remember sitting at my desk. It's actually my little side table now. I was sitting at my desk and I was looking at this page that I had written, and I decided I was going to focus on one of those at a time because you can't do multiple at a time unless they're related. So I had to, in a sense, I had to put my chin down and swing for the fences on this and fucking make it happen. Because if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be here today. It's just to put it simply. So I still had to do the work. I had to do the reflection and figure out why something bothered me. And I had to figure out how I was going to close that hole that was made. It could have been fucking a decade ago. If it was a hole that was my entire goal was to heal those wounds and move the fuck on. And that's what I did. I did a lot of work in order to do that, and I had to do a lot of growing. That took a long time. That's not something that you can do overnight. That's not something that you can do in a week even. It took me a long time. There was a lot of things that I had to learn. I think I was 21 when this happened, maybe 20. There are certain things that from that list that I am still healing from today. I am almost 26 years old. Okay? There's a lot of things that I still have to learn and unlearn, and there are things that I need to heal from, and I'm doing the work to do that. Don't get it twisted. I'm not coming on here giving you advice and not following my own. I am still doing that stuff. It is going to take time and it is going to take effort. So in those moments, whenever you're feeling like you can't heal from something, give yourself a little bit of grace. Cut yourself some slack because it takes time and it takes work. But as long as you're doing it and you're doing it consistently, it can be done. There was a certain mentality that I was in just a couple of years ago. I thought I could do whatever the fuck I wanted. I made it through this stuff and I'm on my way to getting this resolved and getting this fixed, and or at least getting through it. And I thought because of that, I was untouchable. That's not true. Nobody is untouchable. Nobody is invincible, and you don't get to do whatever the fuck you want. It's just not how it works. But once I learned and grew a little bit more from that mindset and I got away from that, things started to get a little bit easier for me in a lot of ways. So yes, it is very important that you have things that you can use as an outlet. It is very important that you give yourself a bit of a break whenever you're dealing with so much at once in the brain. It's very important to do those things. However, it is, I would say, twice as important that you're doing the work to heal. Because that's what's going to get you healed. If you have to go to therapy to get tools in order to make this healing happen, then fucking do that. If that works for you, do it. If it is one of those things where therapy doesn't help you, then try the journaling. Give yourself a certain thing to focus on and focus on that event, focus on that wound, because you trying to do a bunch of them at once just gets really overwhelming and you're going to be feeling a whole lot of things. The problem that you're going to face when you're trying to do this healing is you're going to feel every bit of what you felt when it first happened. Maybe worse. But it's worth going through that and maybe even reliving it in order to close that wound. Because if you can close the wound and you can get to moving on from whatever it is, whatever trauma, whatever event, whatever you need to heal from, then you're getting one step closer to being a healthier person. Because health isn't all about physical. Health is up here too. So that was a lot. I went through a lot of shit. Um, Good thing this goes on YouTube and you can rewind if you need to. Um, that's that's all I have for that one. Um, I just wanted to go through that. I actually got this particular idea from someone very close to me, and I fucking went down a rabbit hole. I was thinking about this all day today, and I went down a fucking rabbit hole with points that I needed to touch on in order to make this a not cohesive, a complete video. And I'm I'm 42 minutes in. So, um, yeah, that's what I have for that for now. Again, if there's a part two, I thought of more shit. But if not, then this is all I got for you. But I hope it's helpful. I will be seeing you in the next one. Bye.